Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time again.
It's time for the J. Craig 5, maybe 10-minute movie review. Hey, welcome back to Movies Over Coffee. I'm Jay of the J. Craig Podcast. If you haven't done so already, click the subscribe button, follow and like us, and you can get all our movie reviews as well as the actual podcast. A couple nights ago, I finally got to see Sicario, Day of Soldado. Now, I say finally because I didn't get a sneak preview for this movie, and I'm a big fan of the original movie. So before I dive into the new movie, let's talk about Sicario for a quick second. Sicario was directed by Denis Villenue, and if you've listened to my podcast at all, you know that I'm a huge fan of Denis. I think he is the best filmmaker out right now. No, he's not. I don't think he is the best filmmaker out right now. Everything he touches is fantastic. So the first movie is a really good movie. It has great acting, great cinematography, great sound, a great story. It's really well done. I highly recommend it. Now, when I heard the announcement that they're making Sicario 2, I was very apprehensive. If Denny's not a part of this movie, why do I want to see this movie? It just sounds horrible. Now, I am slipping. I did not know that Taylor Sheridan wrote the sequel. Well, I knew he wrote the first one, but I had no idea he was a part of the second movie. So if I would have known that, my apprehension level would have went way down, because as Denis Villeneuve is my favorite filmmaker, Taylor Sheridan is my favorite writer right now. So, okay, all signs point to I got to go see this movie. Now, I don't know anything about Stefano Sollima, but it's the director of the new movie, obviously, but I don't know anything about him, and it's really hard to compare a second unit filmmaker who is now making movies as a director to Denis Villeneuve. So I'm not going to compare the two movies in that way because it's very unfair. But let's talk about Sicario, Day of Soldado. So the reason this movie exists is to put Josh Brolin and Benicio del Toro in the same room with the writings of Taylor Sheridan. And quite frankly, I'm okay with that. It doesn't need to exist, but it does. So let's see how much fun it was. And let me just say this right off the bat. It's not fun. This movie is not fun, but it's highly entertaining. It's more of a pulse-pounding, edge of your seat type of movie. It's not fun. It's not that kind of movie. It's a bit in your face. So this movie is called Day of Soldado, Day of the Soldier. Now, that's what this movie's about. Two soldiers, Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin, and following them through this particular ordeal. Now, the movie starts off much like the first one does, with a scene that's a bit horrific. In the first movie, Emily Blunt's character and her team find this house and then all the bodies inside the walls, in the drywall, which was just gross and just weird. So after the explosion, that starts the rest of the story. This movie starts off with a bunch of grocery store, supermarket bombings. And it's a bit horrifying because it's a little close to home, and you start to picture yourself in these situations like what would I do, and holy cow, like what would you do if that situation happened? It's hard to watch. So that starts the movie off because now you have actually the movie is a big pro-wall movie, Mexican wall, you know. It starts off as a pro-wall movie because it's about the border crossings and how many people are coming through and how they're letting through all the terrorists as well. And so the movie starts off with the government, the United States government, wanting to fix this. And so they bring in Josh Brolin, and Josh Brolin's job, as always, is to start a war. But they don't want to start a war with the cartels necessarily. So they bring him in, and he decides to kidnap a cartel's daughter. Blame it on somebody else, another cartel, and let them fight within themselves. And that will help thin them out. So that's essentially what the story is about. Now, it's a bit of a red herring because that's not what the story is, but that's the catalyst to propel us into the rest of the story. Now, of course, once you have a plan in place, things aren't going to go as planned, and they don't. And now our two heroes, I'll call that for a better word, I'll call them heroes, they just start to grow. They grow consciences, and they decide to make decisions for themselves as opposed to just following orders. So that's what this movie's about in a nutshell. I started off by saying that I wasn't going to compare the two movies. I lied. I kind of have to because this movie does miss Denis Villeneuve's craftsmanship. His ability to move the story, his vision is definitely missing in this movie. Whether it's the framing, the composition, or the pacing, something that Denis Villeneuve does very well in all three categories, that's missing in this movie. Now, it doesn't make it a bad movie. It's just not as good as it probably could be. Now, this movie does miss the Emily Blunt vehicle because she was our eyes in this movie. She was the audience in a way because she was inexperienced, way over her head, and in the middle of two kind of, very strong people, like very trained, skilled, and very strong people. But she was the one that we were kind of following. This movie is about two characters. It's about the soldiers, the Day of the Soldier. And that's what we're following. We're following two characters that start to go through a growth and start to develop a conscience and start to feel that they need to do their own thing and follow their heart or follow what they believe is right as opposed to just following orders. And that's what this movie's about. So it's not necessarily about the bombings and the terrorisms and the pro-wall kind of statements at first. This movie changes gears, and in fact, very smartly written into the story, Catherine Kenner, the government official who brings in Josh Brolin, she even says at some point, well, the narrative has changed. And that's exactly what the story does. It changes the narrative, but it's about the characters. So it doesn't matter where the story goes or that's a red herring. It's about the two characters, and they're fascinating to watch. So to sum it up, Sicario, Day of Soldado is a very good movie, and I highly recommend it. It's not nearly as good as the original Sicario, and that's okay because it doesn't have Denis Villenue. Now, what I really enjoyed about this movie is the fact that they took two characters who are typically your cardboard cutout robots, soldiers, and turns them into real people. And that's attributed to Taylor Sheridan, taking these two soldiers and turning them into people, giving them choices and purpose and a conscience and giving them a soul and having them make decisions that are going to affect them, not just the mission. So for that reason alone, I thought it worked. It's missing the Emily Blunt vehicle for the audience, but because it takes those two characters and makes them real people, it works. And if you have not seen Sicario, do yourself a favor. Go and watch it. It's on Netflix or Amazon, one of the two, so you can see it for free if you have one of those services. It is a fantastic movie. And in theater right now with Sicario, Day of Soldado, so go check that out. Don't forget to subscribe to the J. Craig Podcast right here and check out our other videos, especially Needle Drop versus Score, the last podcast about music in movies and how it's sometimes something you don't notice, but it's always present and very, it can add a lot of emotion to the scenes. This movie has that in spades with its music and keeps the intensity level going throughout the entire movie, very similar to the Joker theme in the Dark Knight movie. So really cool music. Check it out. And thank you for listening to Movies Over Coffee. I'm Jay of the J. Craig Podcast, and I need another cup of coffee.